I am Josefina Martinez, 32 years old, and lead data scientist at Axiom Technologies. For 5 years, I poured my heart into building our department from nothing into the company's analytical backbone. My team and I were the invisible heroes behind our soaring profits until our new boss Garrett arrived with his grand announcement. Our new social media rockstar needs the best office, he declared, banishing us to the noisy annex by the service entrance. Watching my team's faces fall, I simply smiled and said, "Okay, follow the directive. Unplug the hardware and pack up." Garrett had absolutely no idea what was coming next. If you're watching this right now, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear more stories about workplace justice. Now let me take you back to how it all began. When I joined Axiom Technologies 5 years ago, data science wasn't even a department. It was just me, a desk squeezed between marketing and customer service, and a vision of how predictive analytics could transform our business. I had left a prestigious position at a tech giant because I wanted to build something from the ground up. Axiom was small then, but their healthcare software showed tremendous promise. The first 2 years were challenging. I fought for every resource, proving my worth through small projects that saved the company thousands of dollars. My early wins caught the attention of our former CEO, Richard, who gave me the green light to expand. That's when I carefully built my dream team. Brandon came first. At 27, he was brilliant but socially awkward. His analytical mind could spot patterns nobody else could see, but he struggled with change and loud environments. His 3 PhDs in statistics, computer science, and behavioral psychology made him invaluable, though his anxiety often required gentle management. Miranda joined us next, a 23-year-old coding prodigy who could write algorithms that seemed almost magical in their efficiency. She was quiet and preferred communicating through code rather than conversation, but her solutions were elegant and revolutionary. Trevor brought our data to life. His background in both fine arts and computer science made him our visualization expert. At 31, he could transform complex datasets into intuitive displays that even the most technically challenged executives could understand. He was also our most vocal team member, never afraid to stand up for what he believed in. Finally, Karen completed our core team as our systems specialist. At 42, she had decades of experience setting up and maintaining the complex infrastructure our work required. She was the mother hen of our group, keeping both our servers and our spirits running smoothly. Our former boss, Stephanie, understood our value. She fought for us to have the perfect workspace, a spacious area on the 3rd floor, with a specially designed server room, customized workstations, and ideal proximity to the engineering department we frequently collaborated with. The space had excellent natural light, low noise levels, and the proper electrical and cooling systems our equipment needed. It wasn't just about comfort, it was about functionality. Under Stephanie's leadership, our department flourished. We developed predictive maintenance algorithms that reduced equipment failures by 70%. Our patient outcome models helped healthcare providers optimize treatment plans, saving lives and cutting costs. Our supply chain optimizations saved the company millions in operational expenses. Within 3 years, our department was directly responsible for 20% of company profits. We were a family. We celebrated birthdays with homemade cakes, supported each other through personal challenges, and often worked late into the night when deadlines loomed, ordering takeout and turning complex problems into friendly competitions. I felt proud watching Brandon grow more confident in presenting his findings. Miranda mentored new junior analysts, and Trevor developed visualization tools that became industry standards. Then everything changed 6 months ago. Stephanie received an offer to become CEO at a major tech company. We were heartbroken but celebrated her success. Management promised to find someone who understood our value. Instead, they hired Garrett Wilson from a consumer goods company with minimal tech experience, but impressive revenue numbers. From our first meeting, I sensed trouble. He repeatedly referred to us as the computer people and seemed far more interested in our department's budget than our achievements. The early warning signs were subtle. Garrett began missing our weekly update meetings. He redirected resources from our long-term research projects to quick marketing wins. When I presented our latest predictive model that could potentially save the company millions, he scrolled through his phone, then asked if we could make it more colorful. Still, I remained optimistic. I arranged several sessions to help him understand our work, created simplified explanations of our value, and invited him to team demonstrations. He attended exactly one, stayed for 12 minutes, then left for a more important meeting that later appeared on Instagram as a lunch with social media influencers. Despite these concerns, nothing prepared us for what happened when Garrett called a mandatory company-wide meeting. Everyone must attend, the email stated in bold letters. Exciting changes ahead. As my team and I filed into the conference room that Tuesday morning, I noticed the unusually elaborate setup. A projector displayed a glittering animation with the words, "The future is social." Brandon whispered that it looked like a teenage girl's TikTok account. I hushed him, but privately agreed. Garrett entered with an exaggerated energy, wearing a bright blue blazer that screamed trying too hard to be youthful. He clapped his hands dramatically and announced with a grin, "People, prepare to have your minds blown." Little did I know that this meeting would indeed blow our minds, but not in the way Garrett intended. It was the beginning of a battle that would test my ethics, strategy, and leadership in ways I never imagined. Garrett stood at the front of the packed conference room, practically bouncing on his toes with excitement. "Today marks a new era for Axiom Technologies," he announced, his voice rising for dramatic effect. "In today's digital marketplace, social media presence isn't just important, it's everything." I exchanged confused glances with Trevor. Our company developed healthcare analytics software for hospitals and research institutions. Our clients were medical professionals and administrators, not Instagram influencers. Without further ado, Garrett continued, "I am thrilled to introduce the newest member of our Axiom family, our social media rock star, Allison Parker." On cue, a woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and a designer suit strode confidently to the front. Her PowerPoint presentation was a riot of vibrant colors and animated transitions that made Brandon visibly wince beside me. "Hello, Axiom family." Allison's voice had the practiced enthusiasm of a morning show host. "I am so pumped to revolutionize our digital footprint and take our engagement metrics through the roof." For the next 20 minutes, Allison spoke about viral potential influencer partnerships and content ecosystems, while sharing examples of her previous work for a makeup brand. Her presentation included zero data on ROI conversion rates or any metrics relevant to our business model. I tried to keep an open mind. Perhaps there was some strategy I wasn't seeing. But when she proudly displayed a mock-up of our serious healthcare analytics platform, redesigned with cartoon characters and flashing buttons, I felt my stomach drop. Miranda leaned over and whispered, "Our software is used in operating rooms. Is she suggesting surgeons need animated GIFs while monitoring patient vitals?" Garrett returned to the front, standing uncomfortably close to Allison. "Now, to give Allison and her future team the resources they need to work their magic, we'll be making some office adjustments." His eyes scanned the room before landing on our team. The data science department will be relocating to the annex by the service entrance, effective immediately. Allison needs a central location with proper space for content creation, and your current area is perfect. The room fell silent. I felt as though I'd been punched in the stomach. The annex was a glorified storage room near the loading dock. It had poor ventilation, intermittent Wi-Fi, and was constantly disrupted by delivery trucks. It was where broken furniture went to die. I looked at my team. Brandon's face had gone completely pale, his hands trembling as he struggled to control his breathing. Miranda stared at her lap, but I could see tears forming in her eyes. Trevor opened his mouth to protest, but Karen placed a warning hand on his arm. "Garrett," I said, keeping my voice level, despite the anger building inside me. Our current location was specifically designed for our needs. The server room has custom cooling systems, the workstations are arranged to facilitate collaboration, and the proximity to engineering is essential for our joint projects. Garrett waved his hand dismissively. "You're just crunching numbers. You can do that anywhere. Allison needs space for filming, good lighting for photos, and a central location for her influencer visits." "Our team isn't just crunching numbers," I persisted. "We're running complex algorithms that directly support every department in this company. The infrastructure in our current space was custom-built for our requirements." Allison stepped forward. "I completely understand change can be scary," she said in a tone one might use with a frustrated toddler. "But I really need a space with the right aesthetic for our brand vision." I took a deep breath, acutely aware that every eye in the room was on me. Fighting this publicly would only make things worse. 5 years of corporate politics had taught me when to hold my fire. "Okay," I said calmly. "Follow the directive. Unplug the hardware and pack up. Garrett smiled, clearly pleased with my apparent capitulation. Excellent. I knew you'd be a team player, Josephina. The maintenance crew will help move your desks this afternoon. What Garrett failed to understand was the significance of my words to my team. Unplugging the hardware wasn't just about power cords and monitors. In our department, it was a coded emergency protocol for a complete system shutdown. As we filed out of the conference room, I exchanged subtle glances with each team member. They understood. Brandon's breathing had steadied somewhat, finding comfort in the prospect of a plan. Miranda wiped away her tears and straightened her shoulders. Trevor gave me a slight nod, and Karen squeezed my arm in solidarity. Garrett had no technical background. He didn't understand our work, our systems, or our value. He couldn't comprehend what unplugging truly meant for the company. But he was about to find out. As we returned to our soon-to-be former workspace, I gathered my team in our meeting room for the last time. I need you all to document everything I instructed quietly. Every system, every algorithm, every integration point. Note the environmental requirements, the bandwidth needs, the security protocols. Leave nothing to memory. Are we really going to the annex? Brandon asked, his voice tight with anxiety. I looked each team member in the eye before answering. For now, yes, but I promise you this isn't the end. Garrett thinks we're expendable. It's time to show him exactly what we do around here. In that moment, I made a silent promise to protect my team at all costs. What Garrett had set in motion wasn't just a simple office relocation. It was the beginning of his own downfall, engineered with nothing more than a directive to unplug. Most people think of computer systems as simple devices you can unplug and move around like furniture. Garrett clearly thought our work consisted of typing on laptops that could function anywhere. He couldn't have been more wrong. Unplugging the hardware in our context meant initiating a complex, methodical shutdown of interconnected systems that powered the entire company's analytical capabilities. These weren't ordinary computers. They were specialized machines running proprietary algorithms that needed specific environmental conditions and network configurations. First, we began documenting everything. I created a detailed spreadsheet tracking each system, its purpose, integration points, and the potential impact of its disruption. Miranda worked on backing up critical code repositories with version histories and dependencies clearly marked. Trevor mapped all data visualization dashboards that executives relied on for decision-making. Karen audited the physical infrastructure requirements that made our current space essential. Brandon, despite his anxiety, created the most critical document, a comprehensive impact assessment, predicting exactly how each department would be affected when our systems went offline. Sales would lose their customer prediction models. Marketing would lose audience segmentation. Finance would lose forecasting. Customer service would lose personalization. And those were just the immediate effects. As we documented, we began the careful shutdown procedures. Each server had to be powered down in a specific sequence to prevent data corruption. Databases needed to be backed up and properly closed. Scheduled processes had to be suspended with proper notifications. This wasn't malicious compliance. This was necessary protocol for relocating sophisticated systems. The fact that Garrett hadn't consulted IT or understood these requirements before making his decision wasn't our fault. We were simply following the directive. The physical move itself was chaotic. The maintenance crew arrived with basic handcarts better suited for moving boxes than sensitive electronic equipment. They couldn't understand why we insisted on carefully wrapping each component in anti-static material, or why certain servers needed to remain in specific orientations. "Can't you just throw it all in some boxes?" one of them asked, genuinely confused by our methodical approach. The annex was exactly as bad as we feared. The space was approximately 1/3 the size of our former area, with no dedicated server room. The ventilation consisted of a single aging window unit that rattled ominously. The noise from the loading dock was constant, with delivery trucks beeping and pallets being dropped throughout the day. Worst of all was the network connectivity. The area had been wired years ago with minimal capacity, never intended for data-intensive operations. The first time Brandon tried to connect to our development environment, the connection timed out repeatedly. "This is impossible," he said, the panic rising in his voice. "I can't even access the basic frameworks, let alone run complex modeling." I placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Document it all, Brandon. Every failure, every limitation. We spent the first day arranging our desks into the best possible configuration in the limited space. Karen worked on improvising cooling solutions for the servers that absolutely had to remain operational. Miranda set up a ticket system to track all the requests that would inevitably start pouring in when people realized systems were down. Trevor, always the most outspoken, struggled with our apparent surrender. "We should be fighting this," he insisted as we ate lunch, squeezed around a small table. "We should go to the board, tell them how ridiculous this island." "Not yet," I replied calmly. "Right now we document and wait. Let the consequences speak for themselves." By the end of day one, the first emails started arriving. The marketing team couldn't access their customer segmentation dashboard. The sales department noticed their lead scoring system was offline. Customer service reported that their recommendation engine was returning errors. I responded to each with the same template. Due to the recent relocation of the data science department, this system is currently offline. We are working to restore functionality within the constraints of our new environment. No estimated restoration time is available. Meanwhile, Allison had wasted no time claiming our former space. Through the company grapevine, we heard she had immediately ordered the walls repainted in influencer blue and replaced our practical workstations with Instagram-worthy furniture. The custom cooling vents for the server room were covered with decorative panels because they were aesthetically disruptive. On day two, Garrett appeared in our new space, his face flushed with irritation. He looked around with visible disgust at our cramped conditions. "What's going on?" he demanded. "I'm getting complaints from every department about systems being down." I gestured to our surroundings. "We're setting up as best we can given the circumstances. Unfortunately, this space doesn't have the infrastructure to support our operations." "Just make it work," he snapped. "This is unacceptable." "We're trying," I replied evenly. "But there are physical limitations we can't overcome. The electrical capacity alone in this area is insufficient for our server needs, and the network bandwidth is a fraction of what our systems require." "These sound like excuses," he said dismissively. "Allison has already started producing content in your old space. The engagement numbers on her first company post are already twice our average." I nodded politely. "That's wonderful. However, I should mention that the customer experience team just informed me that the website personalization is failing. Customers are seeing generic recommendations instead of personalized ones, which has historically reduced conversion rates by 30%. A flicker of concern crossed his face before he masked it with bravado. "Just fix the technical issues. That's your job." As he turned to leave, I added, "By the way, the quarterly financial forecast model is also offline. Finance mentioned they need it for the board meeting next week." That got his attention. "What? Why wasn't I informed about this?" "I believe they sent several emails. Perhaps check your inbox." After Garrett left, Miranda looked up from her computer. "The finance system could actually be brought online with some adjustments. We don't need to keep that one down." "I know," I replied quietly, "but Garrett needs to understand the consequences of his decisions. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way." Over the next few days, we maintained our professional approach. We documented every system failure, every performance degradation, every business impact. We responded promptly to all requests, explaining the technical limitations preventing resolution. We never complained or protested. We simply stated facts. The company began to feel the effects. The website's conversion rate dropped noticeably. Customer service calls increased as personalization features failed. Sales reported difficulty prioritizing leads without their scoring system. Marketing couldn't target campaigns effectively without segmentation. Through it all, we remained calm and methodical. This wasn't about revenge, it was about demonstrating value through absence. Sometimes the only way for people to understand what you do is to show them what happens when you can't do it. By the end of the week, the annex had become a pilgrimage site for frustrated department heads seeking solutions. Each time, I would patiently explain the technical requirements we needed, the limitations of our current space, and the business impact of each failed system. When the head of sales asked when their prediction models would be back online, I simply gestured to the makeshift server setup with its inadequate cooling. "We're doing everything possible with the resources available to us." Garrett's emails became increasingly desperate, shifting from demanding to pleading as the week progressed. But I remained patient, knowing that sometimes the most powerful resistance isn't shouting or fighting. Sometimes it's simply allowing natural consequences to unfold. By the beginning of the second week in our exile, the entire company was feeling the effects of our displaced department. What had started as minor inconveniences had cascaded into major operational problems that threatened the very foundation of Axiom's business. The customer service department was the first to reach crisis level. Without our personalization algorithms, they couldn't provide tailored support or anticipate customer needs. Their call times doubled, satisfaction scores plummeted, and the queue grew so long that some customers were waiting over an hour for assistance. Angela, the customer service director, came to our annex looking exhausted. "Josephina, we're drowning out there," she said, dark circles under her eyes. "Our agents can't even access basic customer histories or product recommendations. Customers are furious about the generic experience." I showed her our makeshift setup and the network connectivity issues. "The servers that host your systems need 10 times the bandwidth we can access here," I explained. "We've submitted multiple IT tickets, but there's no quick fix given the infrastructure limitations." The marketing department was next to feel the pain. Their carefully planned campaign launch fell flat without our targeting algorithms. Instead of reaching their ideal demographic, their ads displayed to general audiences with minimal conversion. "We're burning through our quarterly budget with nothing to show for it." Marcus, the marketing director, lamented during his visit. "Our ROI has dropped by 80% without your segmentation models." Sales took the hardest hit by day 8. Without predictive lead scoring, their representatives were flying blind, unable to prioritize their most promising prospects. Their closing rates dropped dramatically, and several major deals stalled without the customized analytics they usually relied on to demonstrate value to potential clients. The finance department faced their own nightmare as they prepared for the upcoming board meeting. Without our forecasting models, they couldn't generate accurate projections or explain market trend impacts. The CFO herself, Diana, came to assess our situation. Unlike the others, Diana asked more technical questions, taking careful notes about our requirements. "This isn't sustainable," she said quietly. "The board needs to understand what's happening here." Throughout all of this, Garrett's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He would appear in our annex multiple times daily, demanding immediate solutions without providing any resources to implement them. The CEO called me personally about the website issues, he shouted during one particularly tense visit. "Do you realize how this makes me look?" I maintained my professional composure. "I understand your frustration, Garrett. As I've documented in my daily reports, we're operating at approximately 15% capacity due to environmental and infrastructure constraints. I don't want excuses. I want solutions." He pounded his fist on the nearest desk, causing Brandon to flinch visibly. "Whatever you did before, just do it again." "What we did before required specific conditions that don't exist here," I explained calmly. The server room in our previous location had specialized cooling power and network infrastructure that took months to design and implement. His face reddened. "Then work around the clock to rebuild it. I don't care what it takes." "That would require capital expenditure approval," I replied, sliding a folder toward him. "I've prepared the necessary paperwork outlining the cost to recreate our original setup here. It would require approximately $300,000 and 4 to 6 weeks of construction." Garrett stared at the folder as though it might bite him. $300,000. That's insane. The board would never approve that. "It's actually less than what was invested in our original space," I noted. "A space that was functioning perfectly until we were relocated." His humiliation reached its peak during the board meeting on day 10. Watching from the sidelines, my team and I heard how Garrett struggled to explain the sudden drop in multiple performance metrics. He attempted to highlight Allison's social media wins, showing increased follower counts and engagement rates. The board was unimpressed. "How do these Instagram likes translate to revenue?" one board member asked pointedly. "Because our conversion rates are down across all channels." Unable to provide substantive answers, Garrett resorted to what failing managers often do. He looked for a scapegoat, and we were the perfect target. Following the board meeting, he called me into a private conference room. His tie was loosened and sweat stained his shirt collar. "Your team is deliberately sabotaging the company," he accused, pointing a finger at me. "You could have made this work if you wanted to. Instead, you're trying to make me look bad because you're bitter about the move." I remained calm. Every issue has been thoroughly documented with specific technical explanations. Nothing has been sabotaged. We simply cannot run sophisticated systems without proper infrastructure. I want your team working through the weekend to fix this, he demanded. All of you. No excuses. My team has already been working overtime, I replied. Brandon worked until midnight yesterday trying to optimize our algorithms for the reduced computing power. At the mention of Brandon, something ugly flashed across Garrett's face. That weird guy who can barely make eye contact, I saw him having some kind of meltdown yesterday when the air conditioning failed. Brandon has anxiety that can be triggered by environmental factors, I explained, feeling protective. The ventilation issues in the annex have been particularly difficult for him. Garrett scoffed. If he can't handle basic workplace stress, maybe he doesn't belong here. Tech companies need people who can adapt, not fragile snowflakes who panic over a little heat. Something inside me shifted at that moment. I could tolerate Garrett's ignorance about our technical work. I could endure his misplaced priorities, and even the discomfort of our new workspace. But attacking a vulnerable member of my team crossed a line I couldn't ignore. Brandon has 3 PhDs and has developed algorithms that saved this company millions. I said, my voice deadly quiet. His work on predictive patient outcomes has literally saved lives. The basic workplace stress you're referring to is an uninhabitable workspace that violates OSHA regulations for air quality and noise levels. Garrett leaned forward, his expression menacing. Watch your tone. I'm still your boss, and I can make decisions about your team's future here, including who stays and who goes. The threat hung in the air between us. In that moment, I realized this was no longer just about office space or professional respect. Garrett was willing to target my team members individually, starting with the most vulnerable. As I left that meeting, my entire strategy crystallized. Until now, I had been passive, allowing the natural consequences of Garrett's poor decision to reveal themselves. But his threat against Brandon made it clear that more direct action was necessary. Back in the annex, I found Brandon still working despite the late hour, the desk fan we'd brought from home blowing directly on his face as he coded. Miranda sat nearby, quietly supporting him by bringing cold water and checking in periodically. How's it going? I asked gently. I think I might have a workaround for the finance forecast, he replied without looking up. It won't be as accurate as before, but it might get us through the board review. His dedication, despite his obvious discomfort, was the final push I needed. Keep documenting everything I told the team. Every issue, every workaround, every business impact, but there's been a change of plans. They looked up, sensing the shift in my tone. We're done playing defense, I announced. It's time to go on the offensive. That weekend, while Garrett thought we were scrambling to fix systems, I was executing a carefully crafted strategy. The first step was gathering irrefutable evidence of the damage caused by our relocation. I started by compiling all the documentation we had meticulously collected over the past 2 weeks. System failure logs, bandwidth measurements, temperature readings from our makeshift server area, and decibel level recordings from the constant loading dock noise provided the technical foundation. Next came the business impact data. I extracted metrics showing the website conversion drop, quantified the revenue loss from failed sales predictions, calculated the wasted marketing spend, and graphed the customer satisfaction decline. Each data point was linked directly to a specific system failure caused by our relocation. Miranda helped me create a powerful visualization that showed the company's performance metrics before and after the move. The stark contrast was undeniable, with nearly every key indicator showing significant decline. This is devastating, she whispered, as we reviewed the completed chart. I knew it was bad, but seeing it all together like this, that's exactly the reaction we need from the board, I replied. The next phase required allies. My first call was to Diana, the CFO, who had seemed most concerned during her visit to our annex. I requested a confidential meeting at a coffee shop away from the office on Sunday morning. Diana arrived punctually dressed, casually, but still exuding the formidable presence that had earned her respect throughout the company. She listened intently as I presented my findings, occasionally asking incisive questions about methodology and calculations. These numbers are alarming, she finally said, closing the folder I had prepared. But what exactly are you proposing? The board needs to understand that this isn't just a temporary disruption, I explained. Garrett's decision has fundamentally compromised the company's operational capability, and his refusal to acknowledge the problem is compounding the damage daily. Diana nodded thoughtfully. The quarterly numbers will reflect this reality soon enough, but by then we might lose key clients and market position. Exactly. And there's something else you should know. I hesitated before sharing Garrett's threat against Brandon. Diana had always valued our team's contributions and understood the unique needs of specialized talent. Her expression hardened as I recounted the conversation. That's completely unacceptable. Targeting an employee for their neurodiversity violates company policy and potentially employment law. I'm not just concerned about Brandon, I admitted. I'm worried about what this indicates about Garrett's leadership approach. He's willing to sacrifice critical business functions for surface-level marketing and threaten valuable team members when his decisions are questioned. Diana checked her watch. The pre-board briefing is tomorrow morning. Can you prepare a condensed version of this presentation? No more than 10 minutes. Absolutely. I'm not promising anything, she cautioned. But the board should have all the facts before making decisions about the company's direction. With Diana's tentative support secured, I reached out to other department heads who had visited our annex. Many were frustrated enough to provide statements about how the system's failures were affecting their operations. Angela from customer service was particularly vocal, providing recordings of angry client calls that directly mentioned the degraded user experience. My final and perhaps most important call was to Stephanie, our former boss who had moved on to a CEO position, but still maintained connections with several board members. Though she had no official role at Axiom anymore, her opinion carried significant weight. "This doesn't sound like the company culture we worked so hard to build," she said after hearing my account. "Specialized teams need appropriate resources, not Instagram-worthy offices." "Garrett seems to fundamentally misunderstand what we do," I explained. "He values visibility over functionality." "I'll make some calls," Stephanie promised. "No guarantees, but people should know what's happening." By Sunday evening, I had compiled everything into a comprehensive presentation with 3 key components: technical evidence of the infrastructure inadequacy business impact data, showing financial losses and testimonials from department heads about operational disruptions. I also prepared a practical solution proposal with multiple options ranging from restoring our original space to creating a new, properly equipped area. Monday morning arrived with an unexpected development. Richard, the board chairman, requested my presence at the pre-board meeting typically reserved for executives. Diana had clearly been effective in raising concerns. As I entered the boardroom with my materials, I found Garrett already there, looking surprised and uncomfortable at my arrival. His confusion turned to anger when Richard explained the purpose of my invitation. "We've been hearing concerning reports about systems issues following the data science department relocation," Richard stated. "Given the impact on our quarterly performance, we need to understand the situation fully." Garrett immediately went on the defensive. "There have been some minor technical challenges, but nothing that justifies this level of alarm. Josefina's team is simply resistant to change and making unnecessary complications." Richard turned to me. "Miss Martinez, please share your assessment." With calm professionalism, I presented the evidence we had gathered, walking through each slide methodically. I focused on facts rather than accusations, letting the data tell the story of how our displacement had crippled critical business functions. This graph shows customer acquisition cost before and after our relocation. I explained, displaying a chart with a dramatic upward trend. Without our targeting algorithms, marketing efficiency has decreased by 62%, essentially doubling our cost per customer. The board members leaned forward, their expressions growing increasingly concerned, as I continued through sales performance drops, customer satisfaction declines, and website conversion collapses. Garrett attempted to interrupt several times, but Richard firmly redirected him. "Please allow Miss Martinez to finish her presentation." When I reached the section on proposed solutions, I deliberately presented multiple options with varying costs and timelines, demonstrating flexibility and business focus rather than a personal agenda. In conclusion, I finished, "This isn't about office preferences or resistance to change. It's about maintaining the infrastructure necessary for business-critical functions that directly impact our bottom line." Richard thanked me and asked me to wait outside while they discussed with Garrett. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see animated conversation with Garrett gesturing defensively, while several board members shook their heads. After 20 tense minutes, I was called back in. Garrett sat slumped in his chair, his expression a mixture of anger and defeat. Richard addressed me directly. The board has decided to conduct a full review of the recent organizational changes and their impact. In the meantime, we're implementing an emergency measure to restore critical systems. He slid a document across the table. This authorizes your team to immediately begin moving back to your original location, with Allison's social media team being temporarily relocated until a permanent solution is determined. Garrett opened his mouth to protest, but Diana cut him off. The numbers speak for themselves, Garrett. We're projected to miss quarterly targets by 20% if this continues. As the meeting concluded, Richard added one final point. Ms. Martinez, the board, would also like to review allegations about inappropriate management behavior toward team members with special workplace needs. Please have any documentation related to such incidents sent to HR by end of day. Garrett's face paled. The checkmate was complete. As I left the boardroom, I felt no triumph or vindication, only relief that my team would soon be restored to a functional workspace and protected from targeted harassment. This had never been about winning a power struggle. It had been about preserving our ability to contribute value to the company we had helped build. The board's decision to review the situation represented not just a professional victory but a moral one, a recognition that substance matters more than style, and that protecting vulnerable team members is non-negotiable. Garrett's downfall hadn't required scheming or sabotage, just the methodical documentation of consequences and the courage to present the truth when it mattered most. Word travels fast in corporate environments. By lunchtime, the entire company knew about the emergency board intervention and our imminent return to our original space. As I walked through the hallways, colleagues stopped me with thumbs-up gestures and whispered congratulations. I reminded them all that this wasn't about winning or losing, but restoring functionality to systems everyone relied on. The facilities team began preparations, immediately rushing to undo the cosmetic changes Allison had implemented in our former space. The decorative panels covering essential cooling vents were removed, and IT started reconnecting the specialized networking equipment that had been hastily disconnected during our exile. Allison herself was surprisingly gracious when informed of the temporary relocation. I had no idea the technical requirements were so specific, she admitted when we crossed paths that afternoon. No one explained that to me when they offered the space. It's not your fault, I assured her. The decision was made without proper technical consultation. Meanwhile, Garrett was conspicuously absent. Rumors circulated that he had been called to an extended closed-door meeting with Richard and the head of human resources. The whispers intensified when security was seen escorting him to his office to collect personal items at the end of the day. The following morning, Diana called me to her office. There's going to be an emergency board meeting this afternoon, she informed me. They want a complete presentation on the technical infrastructure requirements and business impact metrics. Can you be ready by 2? Absolutely, I replied. Should I bring my team? Just Brandon, she said. The board specifically wants to hear from him about certain incidents. I found Brandon at his temporary workstation, already looking less anxious now that our return to proper facilities was underway. When I mentioned the board's request, his hands began fidgeting nervously. They want me to talk. In front of everyone. Just about your experience these past 2 weeks, I assured him. And I'll be right there with you. Your perspective is important, Brandon. The company needs to understand how management decisions affect different types of employees. He nodded slowly. Okay, for the team I can do it. The board meeting that afternoon was unlike any I had attended before. The full board was present, along with the head of human resources and the company's legal counsel. Garrett sat at one end of the table, looking simultaneously defiant and defeated. Richard opened the proceedings with uncharacteristic solemnity. We're here to conduct a comprehensive review of recent management decisions and their impact on company operations. Ms. Martinez, please begin with your assessment. I presented the complete version of my findings, expanding on the abbreviated presentation from the previous day. The metrics were even more alarming, with an additional day's data included. Customer churn had increased, and a major prospective client had delayed signing after experiencing our compromised systems. Several board members asked detailed questions about specific technical requirements and business processes. I answered each, thoroughly emphasizing the interconnected nature of our systems and their critical role in company operations. When Brandon's turn came, he surprised me with his composure. Though his voice occasionally wavered, he clearly explained how the environmental conditions in the annex had affected his ability to work effectively, and the accommodation measures that had previously been in place in our original Workspace. The noise and temperature fluctuations make it nearly impossible for me to focus on complex algorithms, he explained. In our designed space, the sound dampening and consistent climate control allowed me to manage my anxiety while working at full capacity. The board listened attentively, several members taking notes. When Brandon described Garrett's comments about his anxiety, including the fragile snowflake remark and the implied threat to his position, the head of Human Resources exchanged concerned glances with the legal counsel. Garrett was then given an opportunity to respond. His defense was a mixture of deflection and minimization. The social media initiative is showing tremendous growth potential, he insisted. The temporary systems issues were unfortunate but necessary growing pains as we pivot to a more market-facing approach. And your comments to Mr. Sanders about his anxiety condition, the HR director pressed. A misunderstanding, Garrett claimed. I simply expressed concern about workplace resilience in our fast-paced industry. Brandon shook his head slightly, but remained silent. The discussion took an unexpected turn when Diana presented additional findings. During our financial review, we discovered some concerning irregularities related to the social media initiative hiring process. She displayed documents showing that Allison had previously worked at Garrett's former company and had been hired at Axiom without a standard competitive interview process. More significantly, her salary was 40% above market rate for her position and experience level. Additionally, Diana continued the renovation budget for the social media department's office. Space was approved outside normal channels and exceeded standard allocations by nearly $60,000. The implication was clear: Garrett's decision to displace our department wasn't just poor judgment. It potentially involved improper professional relationships and financial irregularities. Garrett's face flushed. This is completely inappropriate. We're here to discuss department relocations, not make baseless accusations about hiring practices. Richard raised a hand to silence him. All aspects of management decision-making are relevant to this review. After nearly 3 hours of discussion, the board asked everyone except the directors to leave while they deliberated. Brandon and I waited outside, both exhausted from the emotional intensity of the meeting. You did great in there, I told him. I just told the truth, he replied simply. An hour later, Richard emerged from the boardroom and approached us. Thank you both for your candor today. The board has made its decision. Effective immediately, Garrett Wilson is suspended pending a complete investigation into management practices and financial approvals. In the interim, Diana will assume his responsibilities as acting department head. He turned specifically to Brandon. Mr. Sanders, the company values your contributions and apologizes for any inappropriate comments directed at you. HR will be following up to ensure all necessary accommodations are properly implemented. The news spread quickly. By the following morning, the entire company knew about Garrett's suspension. The atmosphere noticeably lightened as departments began coordinating to restore normal operations. Our move back to our original space began immediately, with IT prioritizing the restoration of critical systems. Within 48 hours, the basic infrastructure was functioning again, though it would take another week to fully restore all specialized configurations. Diana convened a company-wide meeting to address the situation directly. Recent events have highlighted the importance of understanding the technical foundations that make our business successful, she stated. Moving forward, all major operational changes will include proper consultation with affected departments and technical assessment of impacts. She then announced the formation of a cross-functional team to develop a proper workspace for the social media department without compromising existing operations. We recognize the potential value of enhanced digital presence, she acknowledged, but not at the expense of core business functions. The most surprising development came a week later when Allison herself asked to meet with me. I had no idea about Garrett's previous connection to my hiring, she confessed. I feel terrible about displacing your team. As I said before, it wasn't your fault, I assured her. I've been thinking, she continued. There might be ways my skills could actually complement your department's work, making complex data more accessible and engaging for clients, for instance. Her suggestion sparked an idea about potential collaboration that neither Garrett's divisive approach nor my defensive stance had allowed us to consider. Perhaps there was value in bridging these different perspectives after all. As the investigation into Garrett's management practices continued, more concerning patterns emerged. Other departments reported similar experiences of having their concerns dismissed, and resources reallocated to visibility projects with minimal ROI. 3 weeks after his suspension, the official announcement came. Garrett Wilson's employment with Axiom Technologies had been terminated. The same day, I received an unexpected email from Richard. The board would like to discuss your interest in interviewing for the now vacant position. The vindication was complete, but it left me with complicated feelings and an important decision to make about my future and the kind of leader I wanted to be. As I sat in my restored office, contemplating Richard's email, I felt surprisingly conflicted. The invitation to interview for Garrett's position represented professional validation, but something about it didn't sit right with me. The past month had revealed much about leadership, organizational values, and my own priorities. I declined the interview. My decision shocked many colleagues. "You engineered his downfall, and now you don't want his job," Trevor asked incredulously during our team lunch. "You deserved that promotion." "I didn't engineer his downfall," I corrected gently. "I protected our team and the company's functionality. Those are different things, with different motivations." The truth was, I had seen what the role had done to Garrett, how it had encouraged his worst instincts toward flashy metrics over substance, visibility over value. I loved building and leading our data science team. My passion was solving complex problems and developing people, not navigating corporate politics at the executive level. Instead, I proposed an alternative structure to the board, an expanded technical operations division that would ensure all departments from data science to social media had appropriate resources and infrastructure. This division would report directly to the executive team, serving as a bridge between business strategy and technical implementation. To my surprise, the board enthusiastically approved my proposal. "This addresses exactly the gap that allowed the recent situation to develop," Richard acknowledged. "The restructuring created opportunities for everyone." Karen was promoted to Technical Infrastructure Director, overseeing the physical and network requirements for all specialized departments. Trevor became the Data Visualization and Communication Lead, working with various teams to make complex information accessible and impactful. Most satisfying was Brandon's growth. His experience speaking truth to power at the board meeting had built his confidence. When we needed someone to develop technical specifications for department needs across the company, he volunteered. Working one-on-one with different teams played to his analytical strengths while gradually building his comfort with interpersonal interactions at his own pace. Miranda took on mentoring responsibilities for our expanded team, discovering a talent for teaching complex concepts to new analysts. Her quiet leadership style created a safe space for learning that complemented my more direct approach. Perhaps most surprising was my outreach to Allison. Rather than seeing her as the unwitting catalyst of our department's disruption, I recognized her skills could be valuable if properly integrated. We collaborated on making our data visualizations more engaging for non-technical audiences and developing accessible explanations of complex models for client presentations. "You know, I never understood what your team actually did until now," she admitted one afternoon as we reviewed a dashboard redesign. Garrett always described it as background number crunching that didn't need attention. "Many leaders focus on what's visible rather than what's foundational," I replied. "The most critical systems are often the least visible when they're working properly." Over the following months, the company culture gradually healed and evolved. Diana, who remained as acting department head, while a search for a permanent replacement, implemented regular cross-functional meetings to ensure all teams understood each other's work and requirements. The board approved a significant investment in proper facilities for all specialized departments, including a custom-designed space for Allison's growing digital content team that didn't compromise other operations. The plan even included adaptable workspaces with various environmental options to accommodate different sensory needs and work styles. 6 months after Garrett's departure, Axiom's performance metrics had not only recovered, but improved beyond previous levels. The integration of engaging content with solid analytics created a unique market position that clients increasingly valued. Our company began winning accounts from competitors who offered either good data or good presentation, but not both. Brandon flourished in his new role, developing a standardized assessment process for department technical needs that became a model other companies sought to implement. His anxieties didn't disappear, but the company now proactively accommodated them rather than seeing them as weaknesses to be criticized. On the anniversary of the infamous social media rockstar announcement, my team organized a small celebration of how far we'd come. As we shared cake and memories in our restored and improved workspace, Trevor raised his coffee cup in a toast. To Josephina, who taught us all that sometimes the most powerful command is simply, unplug the hardware. Everyone laughed, but I shook my head. That's not the real lesson here. They quieted, waiting for my perspective. The real lesson is that true leadership isn't about offices or titles or visibility, I explained. It's about understanding the value each person brings, creating the conditions for them to contribute that value fully, and protecting those conditions when they're threatened. I looked at each of my team members, feeling immense pride in their growth. It's also about knowing when to fight and how to fight. We didn't win by sabotaging Garrett or playing his game of style over substance. We won by documenting reality, presenting facts clearly, and standing together with integrity. Miranda, who rarely spoke in group settings, surprised everyone by adding, and by valuing people for who they are, not just what they produce. Exactly, I agreed, thinking of Brandon's journey. As our small celebration concluded, I reflected on how differently things might have gone. If I had reacted with immediate outrage at the relocation announcement, I would have appeared emotional and unprofessional. If we had deliberately sabotaged systems, rather than properly documenting the legitimate technical constraints, we would have violated our own ethics. If I had pursued Garrett's position as personal vindication, I might have eventually become what I had opposed. The experience had transformed all of us, making us more resilient, more collaborative, and more conscious of the kind of workplace we wanted to create. We had learned that sometimes the greatest leadership isn't about seizing power, but about using whatever influence you have to protect what matters, the people, the principles, and the purpose that give work its meaning. As for Garrett, I heard he eventually found another position at a smaller company. I genuinely hoped he had learned something from his experience at Axiom, though I suspected he viewed himself as the victim of corporate politics rather than the casualty of his own leadership failures. The most profound lesson for me personally was about the nature of power. True power isn't the authority to disrupt others' work or command prime office space. It's the ability to create systems where everyone can contribute their best, where different talents are recognized and supported, and where substance is valued over appearance. Sometimes the most important thing a leader can do is simply to tell the truth about what works, what doesn't, and what's needed to move forward. Not through complaints or politics, but through clear evidence, principled action, and unwavering commitment to both people and purpose. What workplace challenges have you faced? Have you ever had to stand up for yourself or your team against poor management decisions? Share your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more workplace lessons learned the hard way. And remember, sometimes the quietest response can trigger the most significant change. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to protect what matters in your own professional journey.